Hello and welcome to Havok Sports Talk. Every NBA season starts the same. Who's the best player and which team has him, and how many stars are on each team. But when the playoffs start, it's not about who has the most stars, it's who's got the roster that can survive the playoffs. Today we're going to talk about what creates a championship team and also what's better, star driven rosters or in depth rosters with a bench. So we'll start with the first segment. Why talent doesn't actually win titles. Now, a championship team requires stars. That's just how sports goes in general. You don't win an NBA title without having stars, but stars won't win you championships by themselves. The key things to remember about stars in the NBA: stars raise the offensive ceiling of the entire team. The roster actually decides how long you can go in the playoffs without those stars. The real test isn't how good is your best player, it's what happens when your best player either gets all the defense on that particular player, what happens if they're injured, if they have an off night, they're just so inefficient that they're not a star that particular night. What does the rest of the roster actually do? Now, a star-driven team is built around 1 to 2 players. One of the more recent teams that people will know is obviously the Boston Celtics. You had Tatum and Brown. They were the stars who were driving the ship forward. But they didn't win with just those 2 players playing well. A star-driven team traits, generally, the extremely high usage rates within the stars, short playoff rotation, so the stars are on, bench comes on for a break, they're back on, but the bench isn't playing very consistent minutes. You have a heavy isolation ball, so the stars are using the ball by themselves to create plays and not actually throwing it around. And the bench minutes are pretty much just used to give them a break. It's not, okay, the bench players now have a chance to see what they can do. The star-driven teams are generally very explosive, but they're also very fragile at the same time. Now, the ups and downs of having this, the strength of a star and star-driven rosters, the stars can create elite shots and just put them in from anywhere, and it's like, how did he do that? The matchups, when they're on, they can look like they can just beat anyone in the league, and they can actually steal a game because they are such elite talents that when they are on, they can win games that they should lose. The risk comes when you then run into a defensive brick wall. It could be a player, it could be multiple players, and they just shut down the particular player with that matchup. The fatigue of playing the whole season, and then you're in the playoffs, fatigue's building up, and they just run out of gas. And as I said before, if the star struggles and is inefficient, the offense then stalls and sometimes comes to a stop because those players can't do anything because it's not their night. The difference in depth NBA team, so you have at least half your roster being the team, not just 2, 3 guys. You have 7 or 9 players that the coach absolutely trusts to put out there. They're putting them out there because they want them out there, not because they have to. You have multiple people in charge of the ball, not necessarily just one player marching up the field court, and then it's up to them to find a player. You have multiple people capable of carrying that ball up, which then the defense can't actually just go, okay, we shut this guy down, it's all done. You have multiple people, they cannot shut down everyone on the court all night. The lineup becomes flexible, which helps with either rest, injuries. An off night, you just put that player on less minutes and then you bring up the other guy and you're all fine. And you're less reliant on ISO ball, and your star can do his thing, because 9 times out of 10 the star, at least most of the game, will be playing ISO ball. It becomes less reliant on them doing that, and you end up with a bunch of 4 or 5 pass plays that end up in the bucket, or at least a genuine shot, instead of just, oh, I hope this goes in. Now, why does depth matter in the NBA playoffs versus a season? Because usually in a season, the amount of games, the stars generally look like stars most nights. It changes once we hit the playoffs. A playoff series is multiple games, obviously. So the predictability of the offense being from those stars, it becomes easy to adapt your defense, and obviously it strictly comes down to, is Team A better than Team B? It's not actually got anything to do with, is this star winning the game? Because once you shut them down, it's purely on the depth of the roster. So you end up, so say you got 2 elite talents. You then run up against a defensive scheme which is shutting down your star players. A depth roster that's not star driven and not star orientated can then go, okay, you take him, we're just going to use this guy. The defense changes up, you can then make another change, and you're also not reliant on your stars keeping out of foul trouble, because once they're in foul trouble, they're out of the game. The earlier that they get into foul trouble, the more the roster needs depth, because up until the last, say, 5 minutes of the fourth quarter, the stars that are in foul trouble will pretty much not be allowed on the court, just because they don't want them out of there in case this game comes down to the last couple of minutes. You also end up with fresh legs on defense, because you're rotating through, you're allowing the players to play as hard as they can, and then you can trust that while they're having a rest, getting their legs back, the people on the court, they can actually do the job to a sufficient level, and you're not relying on the stars to shut people down. And pretty much, if plan A fails, plan B still works, plan C still works, whereas a star-driven team, plan A fails, plan B is like an emergency plan. Because as soon as your plan A with your stars fail, plan B is pretty much, okay, everything went wrong, emergency time. And 9 times out of 10, that comes down to the coaches, not the stars, whether they win the game or not. Next thing we'll talk about is defense and role players, because there is, like, the 6 men of the year, there are obviously awards that reward these role players, because it is so important to have that 1, 2, 3 guys off the bench that once they're in, they can do their job, and then the starters can rest, and there's no big penalty to the team. The championship teams can switch the wings up, because obviously the quickest way down the court is just to throw it down the wing and then have everyone move that way, and then we can switch the ball back towards center once we get some of the bigs moving towards the wing to stop a 3 chance. And then obviously you need fresh legs for that, which means you need more players to actually be able to do that. The rim protection, you can't just rely on a big guy to do it, because you need multiple people in and around. You might have a big that's sole job is to stop the high rebounds, but as soon as it gets rebounded and it's around the floor, it's those little guys, those role players, that are actually going to get that scrappy ball. They're going to fight like it's their last chance to touch the ball, and they're going to get that ball or get a foul or get a ball up, and then your big comes in and knocks it in your direction, obviously on the ball up. The role players don't need certain shots. They are pretty much, they know they're not stars. They might be trying to become stars, but they know wherever they get the ball on the court, they need to shoot from there and get the bucket on a high percentage play, so they are more adapted scoring from wherever they get the ball. The truth about teams being hybrid teams, so you've got a couple of stars and then you got role players built around to create an in-depth roster. You allow the stars to close your game out. The depth of the roster and the sort of middle minutes, so you got your starters on, they play as hard as they can. That middle part of the game where it doesn't really matter in a general sense, it's usually going into the half, coming out of the half, sort of middle area. Obviously your stars are on, off. But your depth of roster can keep you in those games if it's a close game, or they can keep you in control. Your stars come on, they smack, they either bump up the score or they bring you right back, put you in front, or close the distance if their stars have gone on a run. The stars win moments, depth wins series. And we'll close with what fans and media get wrong about star teams. The fans usually ask the wrong questions, like who's the best player in the series, where it should be which team will survive this series to be able to go on to the next game, because the stars might shine in this series, but what happens if they get a little niggle? They went so hard to win this game because this opponent was considered tough that they're out of gas for the next series. They need to play light for the first 2 games of the next series. The regular season offense versus playoff defense, because we all know that once we get into the playoffs, players automatically, just without really thinking, their behavior changes because it's in the playoffs. It's where the players want to be. The regular season is just, in their mind, a journey to the playoffs. And in the playoffs, the behavior and the psychology of the playoffs become very strict, very severe, and the defenses play, compared to regular season, out of their minds more than they would in a regular season. And the highlight reels of, oh, this guy did this guy finished this game, this did that, over a team that has all these other players doing the, lack of a better term, boring things. Because a lot of what goes into a great shot, usually there's some boring things that go into it. Even off the ball, they have to make it seem like they're going to be the option for the star to actually do their thing. And a lot of the times, if the star is off, it doesn't matter what that role player does. The role player then takes the defender away, the star misses the shot. If you have an in-depth roster, the star knows he's off. The star then can pass to another player who can do the exact same thing, but because they have so many levels of good players, they're able to actually get the same play, but not from a star. So, closing takeaways. NBA championships aren't built on names, they're built on balance. Elite stars support real depth teams. Defense holds up under pressure in the playoffs. And the role players know exactly who they are, what they are, and then make the stars look good. Whereas if you only have stars and average players, your stars are off, your average players can't raise the stars can't raise the average players. So one piece goes wrong, the entire season's over, and you're going home, and it will probably not even be blamed on the star unless they do something completely terrible like Ben Simmons, who got all the blame he deserved for that particular playoffs. But more than likely, it will go on the coach, the general managers, for building a roster which was star-driven, not a balanced roster. So remember, hit the subscribe button, and we do make videos twice a week on NBA, twice a week on NFL. So do check out those other videos. But I'll catch you next time. Let me know what you think about this video. But goodbye.